MasterOdis challenged us to defeat all 6 Uber bosses consistently with super budget gear. With a little bit of creativity and stretching the bounds of what actually has value, we put together a super fun build for dirt cheap. In this video, I'm gonna show you my take on the build that got the job done, and then also give you a peek at MasterOdis's take on the challenge. Be sure to let me know how you would have approached this down in the comments. The charge was simple: build a character for dirt cheap that can consistently defeat the endgame Uber bosses. MasterOdis took a more practical approach with a couple of his builds, which if you're trying to do this challenge, I would probably suggest starting there. With his builds, he was able to pull off a pretty consistent 10-minute torch run. This is pretty impressive when you take into consideration the value of his items. With my build, we first have to make an important clarification. This build could be considered budget, not necessarily because the items are easy to find, but because they're not very sought after or are just dirt cheap. Let me start by showing you what class I chose and how I built this. I chose the Assassin for this challenge. Her Dragon Talon kick ignores target defense, and with the rate at which she can deliver these kicks, this is just too good to pass up in D2R. Because the skill is so powerful, we maxed out Dragon Talon, and that's the only skill we touched in the martial arts tree. Forget about traps, we're not putting anything here. The Shadow Disciplines tab is super important for this build, but not in the way that you might think. Of course, we're going to max Fade, which is probably what you expected, but a crucial part of this build is actually our Shadow Master. We want to try to manipulate her behavior so that she's always complementing our strategy. To do this, we put 20 points into Shadow Master and 20 points into Mind Blast. Not only does this give us a good chance to convert minions for crowd control, but because the skill is maxed out, it tells our Shadow Master to use it more frequently. Any additional points that we have left over, we're going to put into Cloak of Shadows for the same reason. We basically want our Shadow Master to use those 2 skills of her own volition, casting them whenever she can. As far as the stats go, we put just enough points into strength to wear our gear, we put just enough points into dexterity to achieve max block with SS, and the rest of the points go into vitality. The gear is pretty interesting, to say the least. Let's start with this weapon. This is a blade right here with increased attack speed and life tap charges. The reason this is important is 2 things. The IAS helps us hit certain breakpoints for kicking, and it gives us constant access to life tap, something that is very important for the survivability of the build. I've socketed this with a resistance jewel, but you actually have a couple of other options. You could shop a life tap wand from one of the vendors, take it to Larzuk, get 2 sockets, put a shale rune in it, which will also allow you to hit the breakpoint with a bone wand, and then you could do whatever you want with the other socket. On my swap, I have a teleport staff. You could actually just use Naj's Puzzler. It has more cast and more teleport charges, and actually I think is cheaper than this. The helm is G-Face with a lightning resist jewel in it and negative requirements. The amulet is a bit of spice. I use this because of the teleport charges and a little bit of resistances. It's not really worth much, but it actually makes the build kind of fun. You can teleport in on the bosses without having to worry about weapon swapping, leaving yourself more vulnerable with less resistances. Speaking of resistances, we use Storm Shield for all of the resistances that it has here. Storm Shield has a lot of inherent resistances on it. We put a resistance jewel in it, but most importantly, it has that damage reduced by 35% on it as well. As some of you might know, some of those Uber bosses can do some pretty serious physical damage. I use Duriel's Shell with a lightning resistance jewel in it. The most important part about this is that it gives us Cannot Be Frozen, so we don't have to use Raven Frost or anything else. The gloves are Laying of Hands. They have 350% enhanced damage to demons. That's pretty dope, along with increased attack speed and fire resist plus 50%. I told you we were kind of stretching the bounds of budget here, but the point of these rings is to basically just give us as much resistances as possible. The belt is a Mortal King's detail, and for the boots, we actually upped some Gore Riders into Myrmidon Greaves. The reason we upped them is because they do more kick damage when you do so, but the reason these are so important in the build is because they give us open wounds. The Crushing Blow also helps, but in case you were wondering, Deadly Strike does not work with kicks. The charms, again, are a bit of a stretch for budget. Might take a while to acquire some of these, but they're not necessarily worth anything. The only thing they do in this is just provide us a little advantage as far as resistances go, and as you can see with life. Otis also put together a Sin for the challenge with similar but yet more reasonable gear. I put a MaxRoll link to all of our builds in the description below, so feel free to check those out if you want a deeper look at each of them. The risk you take doing this with an assassin is that you kind of have to be on point and paying attention with everything that's going on in the run, using all of the skills that you have at your disposal. Even watching MasterOdis's build and the different things that he had at his disposal is actually a pretty entertaining run to watch, and he was still able able to pull off a torch run in about 10 minutes. Not to be outdone by Otis, I might have a very strange build, but we actually logged a pretty solid time with this absolutely garbage gear character. Here's a look at the run. All right, here we go. We're doing this.
Good afternoon.
All right, now the hard part. Good.
Salutations.
My brothers will not have died in vain.
Oh, shit! Dude, we did that in like 4.5 minutes. Oh, shit! Let's check out this damn torch, shall we? This is,
Stay a while and listen.
It'd be nice to get a decent torch for once, but I don't expect nothing. And it's a good thing I don't expect nothing, because we're not gonna get anything. We're gonna get this piece of trash. Such is the life of a budget Uber kicker.